Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. Every evening, approaching the familiar turn, Eleanor Peterson would slow her pace. Beyond it lay the view of the children's home, where little ones usually played in the twilight. Seeing passers-by, the toddlers would run up to the fence, their eyes filled with pleading, and the bravest would quietly ask, "Auntie, are you my mommy?" The young woman's heart would clench with pain every time. She could have chosen a different route, avoided encountering these gazes, but the desire to become a mother was unbearably strong. The realization of her own infertility was bitter, and she couldn't deny herself this agonizing moment when a stranger, an abandoned child, asked, "Are you looking for me?" And that day, as always, she stopped, looking at the playground with a mixture of fear and vague hope. The children were engrossed in play. Only one boy in a bright red jacket stood alone by the fence. He raised his eyes to the approaching woman and remained silent, but in his gaze was so much unspoken pleading that Eleanor Peterson's heart trembled. The entire short walk past the fence, she felt the child's persistent gaze upon her. She returned home in complete turmoil, and her husband immediately noticed her state. "Ellie, what's wrong? You're completely pale," William asked anxiously. "William, I need to talk to you seriously," Eleanor Peterson began hesitantly, choosing her words. She felt how difficult it would be to express what overwhelmed her soul. "I want to tell you." Her husband chuckled, noticing her nervousness. "Ellie, you're so hesitant, so doubtful. What important thing could have happened? Surely something that could turn our whole life upside down." "You know, Will, that we'll never have children," she said quietly, returning to the old pain. "Ellie, why stir up old wounds? We've already talked about this, accepted our sorrow," William replied, his voice sounding tired. "Why keep coming back to it?" "Will, please listen to me completely. Don't interrupt," Eleanor asked, gathering her strength. "Every day I walk past the children's home where abandoned children live, unwanted by anyone except kind hearts. Today I saw a boy there, tiny. He just stood and looked at me. His eyes turned my soul inside out. Will, I want to adopt him. He will become our son." William Ignatievich grunted hesitantly, considering what he had heard. "I somehow hadn't thought about that. You say unwanted by parents. But do normal parents abandon their children?" "Oh, Will, I know what you might say," Eleanor sighed, anticipating his arguments. "But there are accidents, tragic circumstances. Not all these children have bad heredity or troubled parents. Please, Willie," she pleaded, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, please come with me tomorrow just to see him." This conversation continued all evening, and even before bed, already in bed, they returned to this painful topic again. The next day, William Ignatievich met his wife after work, and they walked the familiar route together. Eleanor Peterson walked with a pounding heart, tormented by doubts. What if her husband didn't like the boy? What if he had already been taken? Would they be able to find him among the other children dreaming of a family? But the boy stood in the same place as the day before. The spouses approached the fence, trying to talk to him, but he just remained silent, looking at them with large, sad, grey-blue eyes. Then they decided to go in and talk to the director. Hope Borisovna received them and told the boy's sad story. His parents died in an accident, and recently his grandmother also passed away, unable to survive the loss of her daughter. The boy, named Ethan, had no relatives left. He was smart, healthy, handsome, but very sad and waiting for his mom and dad to return, not knowing the truth. And yesterday he came back from his walk and told me, Hope Borisovna added, her voice trembling. He said, "I saw an auntie. That's probably my mommy. She's looking for me and can't find me. I'll always stand there and wait. That auntie, who is my mommy, will definitely come and find me." At these words, Elena Peterson couldn't hold back and burst into tears, unable to stop for a long time. Her husband awkwardly tried to comfort her, but tears glistened in his eyes too. Leaving the director's office, they knew for sure that they would return for Ethan. Soon their life completely changed, filled with new meaning. A son appeared in their family, their beloved Ethan, the smartest, the most capable, the most desired boy. Years flew by unnoticed, like a whirlwind of days and weeks. The parents didn't notice how Ethan grew up, successfully finished school and university, went into business, and became a prosperous man. Now they didn't have to count every penny, as before, when they lived on the modest salaries of a nurse and a plumber. Then they saved on everything so that Ethan would have the best: delicious food, good clothes, summer holidays. Now their son, as if in gratitude, tried to give them everything they could only dream of. They went abroad for the first time, bought a new apartment, a spacious dacha, and a modern car. And then one day, Ethan brought his fiancée, a modest and sweet girl named Annie, to his parents' house. Soon, without unnecessary pomp, they had a wedding, and the young couple went on their honeymoon. Now the contented parents eagerly awaited grandchildren, discussing in the evenings whether their beloved son would have a boy or a girl. Elena Peterson imagined herself walking with a stroller, baking pies for the little ones, having fun at the dacha. Sometimes she and her husband argued about the number and gender of future grandchildren. Of course, the grandmother dreamed of the first granddaughter with bows in her light hair, while the grandfather was sure the first would be a grandson with whom he could go fishing and to the garage. But the young couple returned, and Annie's slender figure remained unchanged. The parents timidly hinted to their son and daughter-in-law about their desire to babysit, but the young couple just remained silent. Several years passed like this, and the long-awaited grandchildren still didn't appear. One day, Elena Peterson couldn't bear it any longer and directly asked her son, "Ethan, when will you delight us with grandchildren? We want to babysit so much. You keep putting it off. Why? You have an excellent financial situation. Annie also works. Are you really delaying because of your careers?" Her son blinked in confusion, his face expressing embarrassment and pain. "Mum, Annie was given a grim diagnosis," he said quietly. "She will never be able to become a mother. We've already come to terms with it. Perhaps it's fate. But I love Annie and will never leave her. Please, let's not talk about this anymore. It's very painful for us as it is." The elderly woman's heart ached with the bitter realization that history was repeating itself. A few days later, Elena Peterson walked the familiar road again, one she hadn't walked for many years. And again, before the turn to the children's home, her heart ached with the same intensity. She took the last step and stopped at the fence. The children were playing on the playground as before, some running up to the fence, looking through the bars at the passing women with hope and anxiety. And again, as many years ago, tears welled up in Elena Peterson's eyes. She so wanted to hug and pity all these unfortunate, fate-deprived children. A few days later, she came here with her daughter-in-law. Both women, the elderly and the young, stood by the fence for a long time, watching the children play. A little girl in a bright blue jacket came up to the fence, looked at them carefully, and then asked, "Auntie, did you come for me?" At these words, Annie burst into tears, unable to calm down for a long time, burying her face in her mother-in-law's shoulder. Eleanor Peterson whispered something quietly in her ear. Then they hugged and laughed through their tears, their souls finding comfort in each other. A week later, Annie and Eleanor Peterson came to this children's home, which had become so dear, together with Ethan. But when they spoke to the director about the girl, she said with regret that she couldn't give away just her. "What? Why?" Eleanor Peterson gasped, astonished. "We've already fallen in love with her, and she seems to have recognized us. We're ready to start the adoption procedure. She's touched our hearts so much." "The thing is," Hope Borisovna replied with a sigh, "that Maya has a twin sister, Maria. She wasn't outside today. She's a little unwell. Both girls came to us from the reception center with a tragic and mundane story. It was a strong, good family. The father worked in the police. The mother was an accountant. She went on maternity leave with the birth of the twins. A misfortune happened to the girl's father while on duty. The mother couldn't cope with the grief, started drinking, completely neglected the children. If it weren't for compassionate neighbors, something terrible could have happened. The neighbors pitied the unfortunate woman for a long time, but then they couldn't bear it and contacted guardianship. When the guardianship representatives came, they took the children. You should have seen the state they were in when they were brought to us. Thin, dirty, wild little girls. And the mother, upon learning of this, simply left and got married. That's such a terrible story." "Poor girls," Eleanor Peterson sighed, her heart aching with pity. "Such little ones, and they've already been through so much." "Are you sure?" the director continued, looking at them. "The girls are healthy, without abnormalities, and they have no relatives." "Can we meet both girls?" Annie asked timidly, her eyes full of hope. "You know, I always stand guard over the children's interests and fear hurting their souls most of all," Hope Borisovna replied, her voice serious. "They will see your interest, start waiting, hoping, and they are so small, so wronged by fate. What if you change your mind later or realize you're not ready for such a serious step? That would be a terrible blow for them." Ethan's voice sounded a little muffled, as if he was holding back strong emotions. "We won't change our minds," he said firmly. "We will definitely take both girls. We are very determined. I don't think guardianship will have any reason to refuse us." Days began, filled to the brim with chores, but these chores were surprisingly pleasant. And Annie and Ethan and Eleanor Peterson and even William Ignatyevich found time to drop by the children's home to see their future daughters and granddaughters, Maya and Maria. And then the long-awaited day arrived. Eleanor Peterson set a festive table, baked her favorite pies, waiting with excitement for the children to arrive. When the doorbell rang and the door swung open, she clutched her heart and cried with happiness. All four looked so happy and radiant, Ethan and Annie and their newfound daughters. A new life began, full of worries and joyful chores. The young couple lived separately, but the grandmother and grandfather often visited their beloved granddaughters. And then one day, Ethan called his mother and invited her and his father over on Sunday, adding in a mysterious voice that a big surprise awaited them. "I wonder what they've planned," William Ignatyevich mused, running through possible reasons in his mind. "It doesn't seem like any holidays are coming up." "Let's go and see." Eleanor Peterson smiled affectionately, anticipating something good. "They've been so busy lately with Annie, I don't really know what with. But I've been sitting with the granddaughters constantly. They've gotten so big, so independent. Annie, of course, is a wonderful mother, moderately strict and very loving. And so Sunday arrived. When the parents entered their son's apartment, they gasped in surprise, stopping at the threshold. In the middle of the room stood a large stroller, and in it lay two plump, rosy-cheeked babies. "What is this? How is this possible?" was all Eleanor Peterson could utter, her voice trembling with shock. "Annie and I decided that besides daughters, we also want sons," Ethan began with a smile, leading his parents closer. "We didn't manage 2 sons, but here, Grandma and Grandpa, meet Ian and Katie. They are already 5 months old. These are our children." Annie decided to leave work and dedicate herself completely to the children, but she, Mom, absolutely can't do without your help. And without yours, of course, too, Dad. "Oh, how happy I am!" exclaimed the proud grandmother, her eyes shining through tears of joy. "How rich I am! Now I have 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson, but I think we won't stop at this." Ethan put his arm around his wife's shoulders and looked tenderly into her eyes. "Of course, darling," Annie replied with a loving gaze, confirming her words. "After all, children are such immense happiness.